Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, a weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. Not too much to say here at the start before we call out the Patreon sponsors, but heads up, I will be attending the what has now been made public, the Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers Media Tour. That's all I'm saying at this point. A big problem I ran into with the Media Tour for Stormblood is after the information went public, every day I was being asked, oh, tell me this, tell me that, when's the embargo, when's that. So I'm generally trying to keep talking about it outside of this announcement, kind of on the kind of on the D-low, because I'm trying not to have to deal with that, because it was borderline harassment last time with the number of people who would send me DMs and Twitter private messages and YouTube messages and Facebook messages asking to get information before it was public. It was bad. So outside of this announcement, don't expect me to talk about it too much until the actual I guess whenever the embargo ends up being lifted, that's when I'll end up talking about it. So with that announcement, while there are other things I want to talk about, I want to get through the start of the video. God, my hair is a mess. I need a haircut. With, of course, our Patreon sponsor list, the people who have been supporting through hashtag demonetized massively. The list just keeps getting longer and longer, and I don't know why, because I do not deserve it even one bit. So, we have a very long list. Let's get to thanking them. We have our patrons of Khuja Cross on Jenova and Kurenai Oni. You're used to them by now. They're the first two names you hear at the beginning of pretty much every video that has the patron shout out. So thank you to those two for your above and beyond support. We appreciate it here very, very much. Some of that we have, and oh boy, I just had to add a few names to this list, so it's even longer than it was last week. Whew, let's go. We got our standard sponsors, Rav Mal of Cactar, Kareth Jarrus of Midgard's Armor, Janhyua, which makes me laugh every time, Alburio, Sana Arashio of Brynhildr, Kromgar Holzborgson of Gilgamesh, Kevin, Walbatalia, Alma Elma, Dark Lumina from Jenova, Marianne, Remiel Gaming, Sabo Empire, Mizra, Red Wings of the Baron FC from Zalaris, Cidus Oreo on Shiva, Syd Hellwind of Gilgamesh, Afro Ninja from Malboro, Cheesecake from Leviathan, Matt Lane Weeb, Ashen of Cerberus, Fafarian, Rendil, Stevie-Rex, and Neon. We have our elite sponsors. We got Jay Gardner 99. We got Benjamin, Irish Rager, George, Batar Garl, Yufu Kenshi on Excalibur, Scumlord, Itsumi Amario of Gilgamesh, Ravik, Card Dragon from Fanfrit, Tiger Dragon from Balmung, Edgefair from Ultros, Jerica, Emma, Zernik of Org 13, Chris Suzuki, Crazy Meter from Midgar, Rajaventinus from Cactar, Carol, Serafina Edelise, Senshi, Shadowlink on Tonberry, Dom, Asugawik from Jenova, Limilla Nelhah Migger Summer, Sarah and the Final Family, Janhyua Yotsuyu, Kifka and the Great Eagles on Exodus, Katayoshi from Khuja, Skia Symphonia from Ragnarok, Rylanator Westaus The Purple, Edric Red Seal on Exodus, Lexxie Valentine, Mantaru the Rivivus FC from Sarkim Chives from Jenova, Rynoet Chikara, Fafarian, Siren Phoenix, Down FC on Goblin, and Saren from the Zodiac. I'm flubbing these a little bit because I'm trying to rap God my way through them. And finally, we have our premium sponsors. We got Nathan, Noel, Sumblan, Nakoneyame. We got Shauna Senpai of Behemoth, Zoshibe Hasha of Fanfrit, Beatrice, Kazuzu, Vapatama of Diablo, Shadow Ari of Brynhildr, Zervire of Korol, Alchemy, Shinka, Casual Heroes FC on Megasummer, Touchdock on Hyperion, Kanezuki of Jenova, U-Star on Korol, Sadal, Sarah Frost from Behemoth, Holy Tabasco, Crass 015, Trinity FC on Ultras, Kakazuma, Ignis Fairground from Excalibur, Valestra of Fanfrit, Not Corch from Excalibur, Corvus Moosegar, Private Mikey, Nanik Sami, Rudy Rudiger, Kalikman, Roll Jr., and Kiltastic Jones. Woo! As fast as I can go. Thank you to all of our Patreon sponsors for supporting through hashtag demonetized. With that, let's see what the questions are. I haven't looked at any of them yet, so I'm hoping for some good ones. Let's see. All right, first question. Hi, Mr. Happy. Hello. Do you think you could do a video showing each reoccurring AoE Telegraph marker? I'm constantly playing with friends that seem to confuse many arrow markers for each other. I've looked online, but I've only found a couple of lists and no videos. That actually was an idea I had about a month ago. I've been kind of slacking on 14 videos. I actually have about 3 or 4 half-completed ones. One of them is showing I guess the process of jobs earning new abilities and how the pace of play actually picks up when you start from the lower levels and move on to the higher levels, and my personal thoughts on how they can improve them. Another one was how to properly use squadrons. A lot of people have said my squadron video was completely unreliable because squadrons suck, but I've used them to great effect. So little tips and tricks to help people improve is another thing. This actually was an idea that came up about a month ago, and I started collecting the screenshots for the various ones through my gameplay, and I just ended up never finishing it. It's been kind of weird. I guess with Shadowbringers coming out, I've kind of slacked a little bit because I know I've got a storm of work ahead of me. So I'm focusing on things that are more my personal interests, slower in speed. We've been playing a lot of Final Fantasy XI lately. Your idea does not fall on deaf ears, though. I agree. It is a wonderful idea for this video, and it is something that if I don't do it, somebody should. So it is something that I should absolutely get on. All right, so a bunch of questions that I've had various versions of over the last couple weeks, so excuse me if I'm skipping around a little bit here. Hi, Mr. Happy, or hi, Happy Mister. Oh, I see. First time asker, watcher for some while, and I think your first video on Shiva. Okay, that's when That was like an okay guide, a little bit. What tips would you recommend for new players or tips on how to get non-MMO players accustomed to an MMO like Final Fantasy XIV? I have my wife and her friend now playing, and they've never touched an MMO, and they seem to be having trouble with a couple of different aspects of the game. All the buttons scare them. I can only play 14, but I sure can coach. Any help would be... I'm not sure I can coach. Any help would be appreciated. I think the biggest thing is recognizing the pace at which people pick up on certain things. Like if somebody gets their tank to 15 and they go into their first dungeon and they just can't get through their head to like use flash a couple of times. Let's say you're on Gladiator. Then, repeat that dungeon, repeat the process until that person is able to absorb the information and remember it in a way that is, adequate for party play. But if there's someone who learns it instantly, then move on to the next thing, move on to the next dungeon, next story quest, next whatever. It's all about kind of picking up the pace at which people learn things. If somebody's having trouble with too many buttons, for example, go with them gradually. I mean, that's what the leveling process is supposed to be for, but it's hard to know what every single ability is, how it's going to fit exactly into your rotation, which is why people make guides in the first place. So starting piece by piece and getting it so, okay, you got through that. Maybe it's like the first third of a rotation. They're like, okay, now let's start working on the second third. Now that the first third is kind of second nature. So if they're having a bit of time, a bit of trouble understanding, realistically, they just need more time. They just need to be exposed to whatever it is they're struggling with repeatedly. And so long as they possess an interest to improve, and this is important, then eventually improvement will come. The bigger problem is when people just get frustrated, give up, don't like having other people tell them what to do. That is where you run into issues in an MMO, specifically Final Fantasy XIV with its, plethora of things that you need to know going in. That is where frustration sets in, and that's when people quit. So you just need to make sure that as long as you are the person in charge of helping them, recognize the pace at which they pick things up and play to that pace. Don't expect them to play to your pace if you are someone who instantly gets things. That's my number one piece of advice. At least I think that's the best thing to do. But another thing is just make sure they care, because if they don't, the effort's wasted. All right, next question. I see the word endgame in it. I already read it. There's no spoilers. Just letting you know. Hey, Haps, how you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. Non-14 related question, but with Endgame capping off this major run of Marvel movies, I was just curious, what MCU movies were your favorite character in the MCU? It's funny. I remember the MCU movies I didn't like better than the ones I did, because I generally was okay with most of them, but some of the earlier ones, like, the first two Thors, and I love James Spader, so Age of Ultron, just because it's James Spader, I like it a little bit more than other people might. And then you have movies like, what was one that I didn't think was that good? There was another one other than the two Thor movies that I really didn't think was that good, and I guess I was lying when I said that the first two. The third one was great. What was another one I just wasn't a big fan of? It was one of the older ones. I just don't remember which one. I guess it's not... Iron Man 2. Iron Man 2 is another one I'm not really a big fan of. I could have skipped that movie entirely. I'd say of my favorites, I've always been a big fan of the Spider-Man movies. Even, the second one with Andrew Garfield. And as much as it was hard to watch, the third one with Spider-Man, I still look back on those movies with somewhat fond memories. The times in my life that those actually ended up taking place, I have a lot of positive memories around those times. So Spider-Man Homecoming is one of the top for me. And technically, even though it's not part of the MCU, Spider-Verse would definitely be near the top of my list. It's one of only two movies I have on my phone, so I can watch it on any flight, is Spider-Man Into the Multiverse. Other than that, I think a lot of the more recent movies, I think Thor, the third one, is a really big one. I don't like putting the Avengers movies in there because I feel like that's almost cheating. Except I mentioned Age of Ultron, but just that it's a little bit better because... and I'll say this, without spoilers, Endgame's definitely at the top. It was so worth following all those movies all those years. So I guess if I had to pick three, I'm going to go with Endgame at the very top. If you haven't seen it yet and you've seen all the other ones, go see it. Spider-Man is probably in second place, and I'm really looking forward to Far From Home, which is going to be in July. And I think I think Thor Ragnarok is going to be the third. For me, it was a big deal because like I had hated Thor and this like really turned that around like a massive, massive amount. So I'm going to go with Thor Ragnarok as the third one. I could probably keep naming them, but that's where I'm going to stop. All right, looks like we got a simple one here. Hey, Mr. Happy, questions. Oh, okay. Do you think it's normally ones with multiple questions are way longer than that? Do you think Final Fantasy XV online content is testing around for a new live service or a possible new MMO? And also, when do you think we'll hear news of 16? I hope we don't hear anything about 16 anytime soon. A lot of people, myself included, are suspecting that maybe that title, that the third development division is in charge of, could potentially be Final Fantasy 16. I hope we don't hear about it for like 2 years at least, because oh god, they still gotta finish 7 Remake, and I'm hoping for 7 Remake news because there's a Final Fantasy 7 Orchestra right before E3, and Square Enix just took Sony's place on the main stage. So I expect Kingdom Hearts 3 DLC from that Final Fantasy 7 Remake. Something about it, not major advancements, but something, acknowledgement of its existence maybe, as well as a few things. A reminder that Octopath just hit PC. The Shadowbringers trailer will probably play. The Avengers project, we've heard rumors of some things about that. I know there were some new job postings for the Avengers project that Crystal Dynamics is working on. I'm just hoping to hear about a few of those things. Really, those are the big things, I suppose, for me. As for the 15 online content, I don't think so. 15 was ultimately a monetary, it was a monetary success that eventually ended up in them spending too much time on it, and thus they were given a budget that they couldn't deliver on, and now they have to deliver that budget on a new project, which is where we've gotten all this news about it costing Square a certain amount versus them being budgeted a certain amount, now putting that budget towards a new AAA project instead of more Final Fantasy 15 stuff. But I think they probably have at this point seen enough of like sales numbers and stuff. And obviously I'm only speaking anecdotally, but I'd have to imagine that they maybe looked at that and determined it wasn't the best way to go about things in the end of the day. So I'm hoping that that's what they came to, and I hope we don't see a repeat of that. At least not to the degree that 15 did it, where we started talking about entire second seasons of DLC that weren't initially planned and stuff like that. Like, just, if you have a campaign DLC plan, stick to it, make what feels like a complete game at the base of it, improve upon it as you work on the other upgrades, and then you end up with something like Royal Edition, which I think was actually a somewhat respectable version of Final Fantasy 15 compared to the original release. So I don't think we'll see a new MMO from from Square Enix anytime soon, and I don't think we'll see a new live service, and I'm hoping we won't see a new live service anytime soon. Stick to the constant updates with the mobile games. On to the next one. Hey-o, Haps, as usual, have a great week. Hoping so. You too. Question time. Hashtag Mondays with /and hashtag Mr. Happy. Back then, Dev... Okay. Is it Yoshi P or someone else? Can't remember. Said, I think that they want to rework the older Realm Reborn maps to finally let us fly. Do you think they will finally do something along those lines with the 7th Umbral Calamity to make the change seamless, or change it like it's always been from the start? I don't think they ever do it. I'm going to be honest with you. They said that they would like to do it, but you forgot a key part of the quote. But we'd rather put development resources into new things. They also go into a great amount of detail, and this was Yoshi P who said this. You were right about that. They mentioned how those zones have just basically a bunch of textureless areas that now need to be completely textured and reworked so they can all be visited or seen from the sky. On top of that, the scope of the zones is very small, so flying across them would literally take 4 or 5 seconds. So it kind of loses a lot of purpose in that. They gave a lot of reasons as to why it's not a focus. Now, I guess never is kind of a bold statement to make. I mean, we're definitely getting male Vieira, right? That bit me in the ass once already. But the indications have been enough that listen, let's just say this. I've been asking for them to increase the health on a Realm Reborn hunts so that when massive hunt parties go after them, they don't die in 5 seconds. I was told they'd rather not put resources towards old content. All I want to do is increase the health of hunt monsters. We're talking about making zones flyable. There's a mountain of effort difference between the two, and if they won't even do something as simple as the hunt health thing, I sincerely doubt they're going to be doing anything to make flying available in a Realm Reborn zones, regardless of another calamity or anything like that. On to the next one. Good evening, Mr. Happy. First of thanks I can't read. First of thanks for the great stuff to watch. Thank you for the thank you. You're welcome as well. Just a little question for me. Is 5.x the first time we were going to visit a shard, or can the 3 crystal tower, the 3 what? Or can be the 3 crystal tower? Oh, you mean the 3 different raids be considered a visit to? And I remember right, the void is a shard. That is correct. The World of Darkness is actually the 13th shard. So yes, we have already gone to another shard via the Crystal Tower, which should be an indication that the Crystal Tower is likely more like a shard aetherite. That's now the theory that's going around, that the Crystal Tower, when it appears on a realm, is essentially something you can attune to and use to teleport between the shards. Now, we know that the Crystal Tower one day popped up in the first. It was not something that was always there. This is officially stated on the website. Now, it could just be a translation thing, could just be a means of paraphrasing, or the way that it's interpreted by the people who are currently around and weren't around when it first appeared. But yes, this is not the first time we're going to another shard. The first time was definitely the Crystal Tower when we went to the 13th shard to take on the Cloud of Darkness in the World of Darkness. Next question. Hey, Mr. Happy. First time asking, so bonus of a dwarf-only housing zone. Listen, I'm going to just walk into my dwarf houses, have a good time. Wonder if people can die outside the houses and I can res them. I'll get them in the house. Hopefully, quick question. What's your impressions of the world visit system so far? Do you think it's good for the community? Bad? Do you think as many people jump ship to Crystal as was stated? Would you change anything about it? I've seen lots of opinions about release, but just curious of your experiences with it. 95% of my experience with World Visit has been positive. I have been able to play with a great number more people more consistently because some of the content I'm most interested in, such as the hunt and treasure maps, are some of the only contents in the game that are world specific. You need to be able to physically be on a world in order for you to do those things. So the fact that I've been able to get these full map parties and constantly see new people joining for them, and being able to get in on these cross-world hunts where I'm seeing all these sorts of people who are welcoming me to their servers, and it's just, there's been such a positive, I guess, community aspect of it. There's been some weird things I've seen as well since it's been incorporated. Mostly, you know, stuff like Dancing Thanos popping up in random little minces, but other than that, it hasn't been too bad. I think overall its effect on the markets hasn't been bad. I think that its effect on the community has been good. And really the only, I guess, drawback to it thus far has been that, what's it called? When you can't get back onto your own server. Like, I've left Gilgamesh on a weekend at like 11 a.m. and when I try to go back at noon, 1 p.m., I gotta wait 5-10 minutes. I've seen people have to wait hours to get back onto their server. I don't know that there's a great way to fix it outside of adding a priority system for people who are natively from a world so they can actually go back to it. But, I mean, that's really the biggest drawback. The only drawback that I've had with it thus far, personally. As for the crystal thing, the party finder tells us a very different story than what is probably the actual story. The party finder has showed crystal, ether, and primal being about equally active in terms of Alphascape Savage, whereas for ultimate, ether is still what appears to be the most active of the three. That being said, we are judging the Party Finder and World Visit as an entirety during a time in which Final Fantasy XIV is not at its peak of popularity. It's one of its lulls, where it's technically at its lowest, and it doesn't really feel that way because of World Visiting, in my opinion. But I think that what you're seeing now is actually fairly accurate for how it will kind of expand going into the expansion. I do think that when everyone's back and people have, you know, settled, and, you know, we're in the expansion in the first week, 2, 3, 4, whatever, when the game is at another peak point of popularity, I think you will see Ether generally has more entries for content in general. I think you will see that Primal is doing just fine. And I think you will see that Crystal's doing fine, but could be doing better. I think Crystal, in the long run, will have absolutely no issues. And I think even right now, it's not really having too many issues, unless you're playing during unless you're playing during points of time that are not peak hours, in which case any data center can be bad in that case. But I think Crystal's probably in the worst scenario when playing not during those peak hours. Overall, though, I think everything has gone mostly fine. Just let me back into my server, please. On to the next one. I saw this one said the words last week in it, so I'm just going to take it this week so I take to make sure that I don't miss it again. Hey, Haps, how you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. I asked this last week, so if you don't like it, apologies. I think it probably just didn't see it till after I'd seen a bunch of other questions, because that's usually why I skip questions, unless I've seen them a million times. I've been watching for a while, first time question, not necessarily in Shadowbringers, but in what ways do you see combat job styles evolving? I don't see, evolving is a very dangerous word. because something doesn't need to necessarily evolve. It kind of, as it needs to match an identity, I suppose. So what needs to be determined is the identity for the job in that expansion. Like, where are you taking the job's story? Where are you taking the job's place in the party? Like, how are you taking it compared to the other jobs and what they're getting? You know, nothing exists in a bubble. So just looking at the evolution of a job is hard to do without looking at the evolution of every job it interacts with. It's a hard question, I guess is what I'm saying. As for this, one thing I've thought of is utilizing that last slot 90% of classes don't use and give classes a secondary offhand weapon, such as Greaves. Oh, you mean like for kicking. And expand on Paladin shield use. For me, that second slot, honestly, shouldn't even exist. The Paladin, honestly, crafting main hand offhand, don't really give a shit. Just make it all main hand stuff. Paladin, all that it makes is for 2 different loot slots for your sword and your shield. Fucking get rid of it, make sword and shield just all the one equipment slot. I don't know, I just think it's kind of pointless. I agree with you that 90% of classes don't use it. And I'm looking at the majority of classes that don't use it and going, well, then it's serving very little purpose. It doesn't need to be there. Not let's fill it for the other 90% of classes with stuff they probably don't need. On top of that, it's more equipment to design. It's more equipment to balance. It's just more work that I don't feel adds anything to the game. It's already not a very gear intense game. You know, you're not really trying to seek for very specific sets and set bonuses, and you're looking for a combination of stats, and that's all that really matters. And increasing your item level simultaneously. So just having that extra slot just to me means very little, and I'd rather see it gotten rid of, similar to classes, than expanded upon, because I think it would take resources that are just not really great for the point of expanding the game. But yeah, the first question is really, really hard to answer, because I'd have to think of a job and then think of a bunch of scenarios and how it interacts, and it's just a tough question. Oh, I saw this question. I was about to scroll past it, but this one's one that I get a million times over. Hi, Mr. Happy. Hello. Question. I stopped playing just before Stormblood. How difficult would it be for me to come back in with the new expansion? Work long shifts and only get a couple hours play each day. This is honestly one of the most common questions in Final Fantasy XIV, and I haven't answered it in a while, so let me give you my opinion. Honestly, just do the main story. If you're someone who does not have a lot of time to play, Final Fantasy XIV can very much act like a Netflix series to you, which gets a new season every 3.5 months that takes several hours to complete. And then there's all sorts of spin-offs with side quests and raid stories. And in a given week, you could spend a couple hours on one night working your way through the main story. Maybe you finish it, maybe you don't, but you at least make some progress. The next time, maybe you finish that segment of the main story you were working on. Now you want to work on the story for, I guess I'll use Stormblood in the example of the Four Lords and learn more about Tenzin in the Far East. And then, maybe that takes you a few nights to finish. This game is designed to be better to consume when you don't have 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. When you're someone like me, I'm a terrible consumer for a project like this, because I'm just going to consume it all as quickly as possible. The difference is I don't complain when I don't have anything to do. If I just accept that I've done all the things I'm interested in doing, I move on. It's like, okay, as soon as the next thing I'm interested in comes out, cool, I'll hop right back in. Where some people would rather be like, I should be able to play this game for 100 hours a week. And I'm just like, yo, you need to relax, all right? You just need to chill. It's not necessarily, you gotta go just play something else at the very least, or B, just relax, because 400 hours a month, nothing in this world will entertain you will entertain you well for 400 hours a month for $12. Very few things will actually effectively work that way. I think you'll be fine. You just gotta follow your main scenario and any side quest you might be interested in. It's pretty simple. And on to the next one. Hey Haps, question, answer. I lurk in a lot of Twitch streams. I came across one where the streamer ranted about how horrible leveling is in this game. And it has been on my mind since. To make a long story short, I never felt the leveling process was long, with the road to 60 buff and EXP accessories, but is there something more Square should be able to do to alleviate leveling woes? I guess it depends. Without the context, do they mean completing the story, or do they mean leveling? Because just leveling is insanely fast in this game. The first time through the main scenario, not so much. That's why those skip potions exist in the first place. And I'm an advocate for streamlining some of the earlier quests to make it a little bit faster. We have 100 quests for Realm Reborn. We only have 60, I think, for Heavensward, and around that for Stormblood. I don't know the exact number. And it's just, it's so many quests. they get you leveled pretty quick. You know, I've done several characters through the main scenario quests, and when I go back and do them, they never really feel as long, but I'm doing them for the second time, not the first. And if you're not interested in the story, then it hurts a lot. That's why when I often compare it to the Netflix series, it's because when you are going through the story the first time, you should kind of just try to sit back and enjoy it. You know, sometimes you have a Netflix series, you're like, oh, that season wasn't too good, and wow, I really love that season. And 14 is very much that way. You know, Realm Reborn is a good, you know, pilot, and then 2.1 to 2.3 is kind of like, this is like that season. This is like season 3 of Dexter. You know, I'm not really into this villain or whatever is going on. I feel like nothing important's happening. Then you go into like 2.4 and 2.5, like, all right, we're starting to expand on things a little bit. It's getting interesting. And 3.0 drops a bomb on you, and you're just like, holy shit, that was incredible. Slows down for a little bit, picks up, slows down, picks up. And then just taking the time to stop and enjoy that for the first character and job you level, super important. I just think they could make a Realm Reborn, or the post of Realm Reborn quests, a little bit less shit. This seems like an easy one. Hey, Haps, it's been a while. How you doing? I'm doing alright. You doing alright? I'm doing alright. Question, do you think that Final Fantasy XIV will be playable on the PS5 on launch, or would Square have to make another launcher specifically for it? I've heard the PS5 is backwards compatible, and I was curious on your thoughts. Well, knowing them, they'd want to make use of the PS5's, of the PlayStation 5's specs. You know, it's improved power. You know, they wouldn't want to stay in the past with the PlayStation 4 and be like, well, we can't improve that ever again. It's not like it's Final Fantasy 11, which was made with a PlayStation 2 dev kit, which created a lot of problems and still to this day creates quite some problems. I have no doubt they'll make a PS5 version. I'm 100%, no, I'm not doing that. I would be shocked if they weren't in some way already working on advancements for the PlayStation 5 eventually. Obviously, they won't tell us until the PlayStation 5 becomes official, which we already know it is, but we don't know if it'll be called that. And I hope it's good. It'll be better. It has to be better. It has to be. All right, we probably got time for a couple more questions, so let me just grab what I can. Hello, Haps. I asked a question last time about trying harder content with anxiety, and I wanted to let you know I'm doing better with hard content, so thank you. Hey, grats. Now my question, I was wondering what aspects of Eureka you'd like to see carry over to whatever new exploration content we have coming in Shadowbringers. I know people always ask what you changed, but I don't think I've heard your answer on the other side. Thanks for all your content. Thank you for asking the question. Eureka, I think on the later ends, where we see Pyros and Hydatos, we see kind of, we get a kind of collective idea of what the good and what the bad was. I think logograms and logos actions, huge positive. The initial exploration of the new skills was fantastic. I think they could definitely do with less skills at first, and adding more incrementally, like start with maybe 18 to 20 skills, and then add another 15 skills, and add another 15 skills throughout the zones. That way there's always this new sense of exploration when trying to discover the new abilities. It was great. It was great to just be able to break anything however I wanted with those actions. And it gave me a lot of item hunting to do. I was always interested, oh, do I want to make one party to get this or another party to get that? Maybe I just don't want to do those things right now. Maybe I'll just buy them. It created new markets, which I made 10, 20, 30 million gil off of. So obviously I liked it. I think the bunny fates are a good idea. I think treasure hunting in general is something that should be more encouraged in exploration content. I think the execution of the bunnies is only so-so. I think the way that it determines who actually gets a bun and then it cuts, half the other people out. Not really a big fan. I'd prefer they lower the rates, the odds of you getting stuff a little bit more, and increase the number of bunnies that were actually available, because it never feels good to commit your time to something and get nothing, and again and again and again and again and again. Or maybe even get like multiple carrots, and then after you get a certain number of carrots, you can go get your own bunny if you haven't actually been getting them. Like a totem system for that. I think treasure maps in general, something I'd love in the open world, is something I would love in Eureka as well. Would they be able to do treasure dungeons? I don't know that they would. I think there would be some problems probably with that. Even if it just teleported you into a chamber that allowed for that kind of thing. I think there'd be bigger issues with it that maybe wouldn't make that, but still treasure maps, especially as a mean to earn certain other items that aren't overlapping with bunnies, or there's very little overlap with bunnies. I think keeping the leveling in there is fine. I think keeping the mount restriction in there is fine. I think they should maybe design the maps as a mix of what Hydatos is and what Pagos is, Pagos' map in general is not great for actually getting around, especially as a new player, but it does have some unique uses of verticality and exploration involved with it. I just think that the whole open thing for Hydatos, while it was nice that it was different from Pagos and Pyros, it was too much of one thing. And I think that was the thing with Eureka, is they just had too much of either hallway, giant room, or whole thing is wide open like Automos or Hydatos. Give us a little bit more in between, something that feels a little bit more, mixed. And, maybe once in a while do one that's like fully, one way or the other. What's another thing that you could do? Public dungeons. Public dungeons I could do a whole video on. In fact, I already have. I think they should make them smaller, focus on groups of 4 to 8 as opposed to this whole 56 or 54 player dungeon that you have. And make it so that it's a lot more controllable by the player. Make it so there's multiple entry points to various different versions of similar dungeons with similar bosses. I think that the whole elemental gear and the Eureka effect on armor was good for inside of Eureka and exploration content in particular. Let us go crazy with more gear effects. Let us have this alternate form of progression, gear progression that is exclusive to this content, because it was actually a satisfying aspect of having these upgrade processes for gear that I could use on the outside, but was also great inside, some of which was exclusively great on the inside. It's new glam and new gear progression without even touching the original game's gear progression. I thought it was really well executed. I hope that they take everything that was better about Eureka and do it from the beginning and then expand upon it further. I think that's the biggest lesson I hope they learned. All right, 2 more questions. Hello to you too, by the way. Hey, Mr. Oh, you said hi. Now I feel like an asshole. Long-time viewer, first-time asker, have a bonus of the perfect implementation of Puppet Master for the next limited jobs. Now, you started off really well, and then you said limited jobs, and now I'm kind of sad. My question is this. I've recently decided to take the leap and make a few YouTube videos on Final Fantasy XIV and subsequently give Twitch streaming the old college try. And do you have any particular artists for commissions that do commissions for any of the graphics you use, or did you do them yourself? Me. Art. The only art you'll get out of me starts with an F. It's fart. Anyway, moving on. There's a lot of different answers out there, but I've watched the channel for so long, I figured I'd ask you. Anyway, thanks in advance from Sky Narukame from Sargatanis. The artist that does all of my Twitch emoticons and has done a lot of the art for the channel over the years, but mostly focuses on emotes now, is Mori Draws. Just exactly like that. M-O-R-I Draws. He's done phenomenal work for us over the years. As for other things such as... actually, no, he's pretty much done all the art for the channel over the years. I did have... what's it called? Curie Fury, and I always have a hard time saying his name. He did the intro for this, just took my logo and animated it. And then I had another artist, James, and I can't remember his last name off the top of my head right now. He's doing my new Shadowbringers intro, and he's doing all my rebranding for Shadowbringers related stuff. And I having a friend of mine, Jesse, animate it, but I mostly just had Maury do everything. He doesn't do that anymore. He sticks strictly to emotes. So unfortunately, outside of James, who I think I tweeted about not too long ago, I'd have to look at his name. He does that, but I just put feelers out on Twitter, pretty much was what I did, looking for commission. Oh, and do not expect anything for free. So many people try to get people to do art commissions, be like, hey, I'll give you exposure on my channel. Fuck that shit. You pay your fucking artist, all right? Just making sure we're on the same wavelength here. And I was looking through a lot of the questions for the last one, and most of them are repeats from questions we've done very, very recently. So I'm going to take this one, but it's a little long, so I don't mind. Anyway, hey, Mr. Happy, how you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. I follow you since Heaven's Word never stopped. Thanks for bringing all the content to the game. Thank you for watching it. Despite how long I've followed, I've never asked a question, never had anything to ask until now. Got 2 for you to choose from, or take them both. Oh, I didn't even read that I was going to have to choose one. Also, first time bonus, have some books to sit on to help you drive the regalia. Hey, no, I stand, okay? I stand. Help me more these last few months by simply not being so negative about the announcement. Sometimes it's been overwhelming. You're helping me stay hyped for Gunbreaker and not be a doomsayer. Anyways, thank you. Well, I'm glad. I'm just level about stuff. I either don't care enough to get upset or I just, yeah, no, that's it most of the time. So let me see the questions. Question number 1, Gunbreaker. I noticed little talk or speculation on the new jobs anywhere. Do you plan on doing a bestiary on Gunblades? No, because it's literally just going to be like, hey, in Final Fantasy VIII, Squall had a Gunblade, Cypher had a Gunblade, and in other games, people have had blades with guns on them. Lightning's sword turns into a gun, if you want to count that. and I'm done. Yeah, it's not interesting enough. The dancer one I'm planning on doing, but not a Gunblade one. As for the second question, jump potions. I recently was helping a friend level through Stormblood and had a very interesting encounter with jump potion users. I'd forgotten that was a thing entirely until then. I've had some pretty rough times from toxic people jumping on and just being butts about the game. Do you have any interesting jump potion stories you'd like to share? No, anytime I've encountered someone with a jump potion, they've asked a lot of questions, which is the right thing to do. You know, people who are used to playing for a long time, I just think, oh, well, if you just played the game, then you'd already know those things. Yeah, but you're not answering the question, you know? When I see a jump potion, you're like, hey, I used a jump potion. I don't want to be a scrub. Please let me know things. And they ask, oh, what about this? What about that? Oh, I didn't know about that. That's cool. I love that because that's them, I guess, legitimately using the jump potion to get caught up level-wise. But they're putting in their own effort to get caught up knowledge-wise. No, I don't have any jump potion stories where somebody used a jump potion, they were an asshole, or, you know, they had no idea what they were doing, or even if they didn't know what they could have been doing as well, the people I've encountered were open to improvement. And I don't know, maybe it's just my luck because I don't do a ton of duty finder stuff. A lot of the time I'm encountering these people on my Twitch streams or in my YouTube comment sections and not, you know, out in the wild, I suppose. So I'm kind of in my own closed bubble for these scenarios, but I've had very positive interactions with most jump potion users. I can't think of one off the top of my head where I've had a negative one. So wish I had something interesting to share, but quite frankly, I'd rather not have something interesting to share in this case. Anyway, that's going to be a wrap for my questions this week for Mondays with Mr. Happy. Thank you again to our patrons at the start of the video for sponsoring. I had to burp right there and I had to stop it from happening. And thank you to everyone who asked a question. If you would like to ask a question for Mondays with Mr. Happy, be sure to go to the comment section of the video below and ask. Maybe I answer, maybe I don't. Maybe it's a question I've answered a million times and I'm like, I've done that enough. Or maybe it's a question that I've never gotten before, or a question I haven't gotten in a very long time, unless I'm like, I could give it a shot. We'll see. Never know. Anyway, thank you for watching this episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. I will see all of you in the next one. And until then, take care.